This podcast was brought to you by Irrigation and Green Industry, the leading business magazine for landscape and irrigation contractors. For the latest industry news and the digital edition, visit www.igin.com.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Bringing Water to Life podcast. And we're on video, too. The at-home edition, I guess. Everyone's doing it, right, Kyle? Why not us?
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
we're all
Like
in
the
this together.
Conan
Yeah.
O'Brien, Jimmy Fallon, Stephen Colbert, and Bring Water to Life. I
And
see no difference between any of them.
no,
So why not do Bring Water to Life at home, too?
I mean, we're absolutely in the same company as them.
That's how I see things. And other
Mm-hmm.
people may disagree. That's fine. My name is John Farner. For those who have never seen me, this is what I look like, only a bit, bit ungroomed and longer hair. To my side, he's on that side of me right now,
Yeah.
is Kyle Brown. Kyle is the editor-in-chief with Irrigation and Green Industry magazine. So Kyle, welcome.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here.
Now
It's
you
an honor
are,
to be at this podcast.
honor, I don't know if it's the right word, but anyway, well, I'll take it.
Yeah.
You're in Ohio, Columbus, Ohio?
No, I'm in Akron,
Akron, that's right.
but I've always told the story that I usually start out by saying I live in Cleveland, and then if you're familiar with Cleveland, then I'll say like, oh well, actually Akron.
Actually, Akron, okay.
Uh,
How far is Akron from Cleveland? Is it pretty close?
About an hour away.
An
We're
hour away? Okay.
not super far away. I'm a good 2 hours from Columbus though, so
Okay.
which is the only part of Ohio right now that apparently doesn't have some snow on it. So
Oh, is that right? Well, I live in Maryland,
yeah,
and it literally snowed today.
yeah,
On my
same
window.
here.
Yeah, it was pretty wild weather we're having. Weather is not what we're talking about here.
Right.
We decided to get this podcast back up and running, and I'll try to edit the video to get that up as well. We want to have a series on what's going on in the green industry with COVID-19. As many of you are aware, the Irrigation Association has been pretty active over the past 3 weeks when it comes to our industry's response to COVID-19. And I'll tell you, Kyle, it hit our industry like a ton of bricks out of nowhere. And I think back to the first week that the stay-at-home orders were coming into play, and it was just a 1-2 gut
Yeah.
punch, left, right, and we can thank our stars. It's not like we're the restaurant industry or the movie theater industry, or movie theaters isn't the wrong, but like the restaurants,
Entertainment industry.
retail, like
Yeah.
small business side. But our industry is pretty affected, and we
Yeah.
are responding in very different ways. And I know you've had various conversations with some on behalf of the irrigation green industry, with some folks you've talked to as well on their response and how COVID-19 is affecting them.
Yeah, I've been trying to keep in touch with the people that are actually out doing the work as best I can. Just trying to connect, and not even just for for what we're doing for the magazine, but also just to hear back from them to see, what are they seeing out there. And it's a wide range of experience for certain.
Yeah, and oh gosh, and there's just so many things going on right now within
Yeah.
the industry and our response and how it's affecting the industry. It's not all rosy. There are some really good stories of things happening out there,
Yeah.
but we just wanted to get this podcast up and running to share some different perspectives on what's going on throughout the United States in different pockets of where things are going on,
Yeah.
and how we're responding to it. And both from an agricultural as well as a landscape perspective.
Right.
Just to kick things off, I know that everyone's talking about critical infrastructure and essential business. Those are like key words that 3 weeks ago we had never even thought that we'd ever hear of. It's the Irrigation Association had our fly-in the first week of March.
Yeah.
It was March 3rd and 4th, and we were all in DC, and we had some great discussions around the labor needs of the landscape market, H2B,
Yeah.
talking about our certifications and promoting certifications in different ways through Congress. And we were talking about agriculture, we're talking about productivity and the USDA and innovation agenda and all these different things, right?
Right.
That talk about, our industry and promoting the industry. And when we were on Capitol Hill, Congress actually passed one of the COVID-19 packages
Right.
on Capitol Hill. And I remember we were up on Capitol grounds when Vice President Pence's motorcade was coming up to the Capitol, and he had some meetings in the Capitol when the bill was passed in the Senate, and then he left. But at that point in time, we lay people didn't really understand. We weren't able to go and sell our stocks like some in the know were.
Yeah.
We didn't know what was going on, what was coming down the road. And I just remember being in DC at the time and all of the people that were around us and everything else. But those conversations seemed like it was so years ago compared to where we are now as an industry and everything else. And so it's been quite the past few weeks. And this is one of the ways that the industry, the association at least, would like to get our story out there on what we are working on and how we're communicating and the stories from the field. And so Kyle, through your experience with irrigation green industry, how what you're hearing out there as well, just good, bad, we want to tell it all. And so this is one of the best ways to do that is to do this podcast. Right.
And I mean, and I think that trying to make these connections where we're able to share different perspectives and really being able to get different resources out there that people will be able to, I mean, wherever you are in the industry, being able to find a place that you can kind of find something you can do just to be proactive about the situation, but then also see how other people are reacting to it as well. I mean, more perspectives only going to be helpful in this case.
That's right. And yeah, that's absolutely right. And our goal is also to provide information to everyone as well. There's a lot of things happening out there through unemployment insurance, to the Paycheck Protection Program, to the emergency loan relief with the Small Business Administration. There are a lot of things out there, a lot of tools out there, a lot of resources available out there for all of the segments of the full irrigation industry, manufacturing, then contracting, distributions, dealerships. There are options, there's help everywhere. And from an association side, where we are seeing those gaps, that's where we'd like to get information from you so we can convey that to the right people where there are gaps and how things are affected.
And again, just as a reminder, I mean, of course, because of the way that, the IA's resource page, fantastic place to check out all the different tools that we have available and everything that we're picking up from around the industry itself. And any of the information that we can get from IGIN on our side, we're definitely keeping a continually updating story. So that we're able to get the newest headlines to you guys as fast as we can. This is a tough story to keep on top of because so much is happening. But we're with your help, of course, we're trying to team up to get as much information out there as we can.
So today we started out, we're interviewing Mr. Jeff Stone with the Oregon Association of Nurseries. Jeff is a friend of mine, and I think now he's a friend of yours too, Kyle.
I would say so. Yeah. I think, I mean, our movie taste at least aligns.
Yes. Well, there you go. So we try to keep, as usual with this podcast, at least when I'm involved, we try to keep it as light as possible, but really try to provide some good information while being entertaining at the same time, because I think that's what people need right now is some entertainment in their lives while getting pertinent information. And that's one of the goals we have for this podcast. And Jeff is a great person to start out with. He is a leader among equals when it comes to the state efforts for the green industry in response to COVID-19. And I hope you enjoy the interview. And Kyle and I will be back afterward to kind of wrap things up. So sound good, Kyle?
That sounds good to me. Let's get rolling.
All right. Here's Jeff. All right. Welcome to the Bring Water Life podcast. And we'd like to welcome Jeff Stone with us today. Jeff, you are the executive director of the Oregon Association of Nurseries. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Yeah, you go by many other titles too, but that's your official one you go by today.
Yeah, Emperor is
Emperor. Okay. Yeah. The man, the Emperor.
Yeah, the man, whatever.
So I've been heard a lot better, a lot worse. So,
fair.
Yeah. How long you been at OAN?
This is my 15th year at OAN.
15 years.
I served the first 4 years as their government relations director, the internal person.
And that's when I think I met you when I was with the American Nursery and Landscape Association when you had that job. Yeah. And I think I was with ANLA when you were hired, right? When you started with OAN. Is that right? Okay. So it's been a long time that we've known each other.
Absolutely. And then I've been the exec for the last 11.
Great. Man, this industry has been hit by a ton of bricks with COVID-19. And I think I've seen you more via Zoom meetings in the past 3 weeks than I think
Yeah.
I have in the past 15 years combined.
Well, I think that's absolutely true. And I'm such a technophobe. I was able finally to get Zoom working, and now it's my life.
That's right.
And now I yell at people who are on mute that they can't figure it out. And I've been fresh on this for 2 weeks.
That's right. So tell me a little bit about first in Oregon, okay? And then I want to go talk about the more broad national perspective, because you've taken a very good national role in coordinating the dialogue between different states and how the different stay-at-home orders and state directives have impacted the full green industry. So I want to talk about first Oregon and then go broadly. And then I know Kyle, you'll be part of this conversation too.
Yeah.
You'll jump in and I'll stop and have you ask some questions too. But let's start with Oregon. What have you guys seen so far in Oregon? Because I know first the nursery industry is very important in Oregon. So what are you seeing there first, and then we'll kind of talk nationally.
Sure. And just for perspective, I mean, the nursery industry in Oregon is the third largest nursery state in the country. We're almost $1 billion worth of sales on the wholesale side. We are very much integrated with the other three, I call it the big four. So growers, greenhouse operators, retail, and then I call it supply chain, but it's more like irrigation, landscapers, that. So it's very much integrated.
Yeah, the whole design, build, maintenance, like that side of the equation. Yeah.
Absolutely. And so while there's no good time for a pandemic, right? If this was in the fall, a lot of our folks could probably manage the situation a lot easier. The difference for Oregon, both on the retail side and the grower side, is that 70% of our sales are between March 15th and June 1. So when this hit, not only is there the great uncertainty about whether or not you're an essential business, which we were able to get the entirety of those big four listed as essential. But secondarily, how do you keep markets open? So you can have a truck go all the way to New York, but if it gets turned around, you don't get paid.
That's right.
Yeah. So keeping markets open was really the predominant thing after we were able to get us listed as an essential business. We created a resource page, which I encourage folks to look at. This is no time to hoard information.
I agree. That's right.
And so then I'm excited, and John well knows, we can get into this later about kind of the market map that we are creating. So that's Oregon, and that's
and I want to stick with you for a second more in Oregon, and I don't want everything to be doom and gloom, but what do you guys see how this playing out, because you guys ship material throughout the United States?
Yeah.
And so let's talk about the immediate kind of what you're seeing, and then what your folks are expecting longer term. Immediately, are you guys having issues with transportation, getting into other states? Because even in Oregon, as you said, the big four are still open. But in other states, those the retail side may not be available, and maybe the installation and maintenance side is not available. So what are you guys seeing right now in that aspect?
Well, in the early days of this, which is what 3 weeks ago,
I mean, three short and long weeks ago, man.
Yes,
it's like 3 years. A lot of the market was based on rumor about certain markets being closed. And so we reached out to the Oregon Truckers Association, my counterpart there, saying, how do we triage this if there are rumors that you're going to get to British Columbia and not be able to, truckers are not going to be able to go. So the initial part was looking at that, right? But I would say that it's a kind of there are some aspects where markets are thriving, because people being at home, they look out at their yard and say, oh man, I should have always put in my irrigation system by now. Or my plants look like Dr. Kevorkian is in charge of that. And, and then they want to have an outlet. Plus, it's something that families can do together while they're sequestered together.
Right. That's
So
absolutely right.
all those things said, let's not say that the rose is blooming. I mean, a lot of our folks are looking at 50% reduction in sales.
Yeah.
Retail operators, a lot of them have short-term loans that get them through the winter months and depend on this time of the year to make themselves whole. And we're talking about a perishable good. So, if that plant misses its window, you really can't repurpose it because it's grown for a specific customer and time. What they do is that they don't want the price of the plant to go in to really be depressed. So what they call is they put it on the burn pile. So to keep the market. So all that investment, all that time that they've grown a plant for 4 years gets thrown in a big old pile and set on fire.
Yeah.
No
Wow.
greater metaphor for this thing probably exists.
Yeah, that's right. And gosh,
Yeah.
what a tough situation. And I'm sure that, your growers making decisions now for 4 or 5, 6 years down the road too, depending on the cycle of a plant from seed to, sale basically, and how this affects your product 5 years from now and what's available to the marketplace is,
Absolutely.
that's something that you guys are, I'm sure, looking at too.
The only other thing I would point out, before we move on, is on the farm worker side. I mean, it's hard enough to get labor.
Right.
One of the big difficulties we have with social distancing is that you can accomplish that in the field or in the greenhouse or at the retailer. But culturally, for a lot of our Hispanic workforce, they'll be separated and they want to go into the lunchroom and have lunch together.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's just the way, because nursery operations like yours are really kind of like a family atmosphere.
Yeah.
So that part's probably been the hardest just mentally for folks. So that just this one thing that doesn't get accounted for.
So let's talk about the national perspective now. And I know I'm taking the conversation here, Kyle. I apologize. I want to get all this stuff off my chest first. I've had the unique opportunity to be part of this national dialogue that you've convened with the other state landscape associations, nursery associations, the state associations represent the full green industry, basically. And there's a sect of us that have gotten together and had regular conversations. Do you want to talk a bit about what your experience in convening that dialogue and leading that dialogue among the states, kind of what you're seeing, some of the key points from what you've heard from folks and kind of the battle stories you've heard, things that stick out?
You bet. And thanks for asking the question. And thank you, John, for participating in that. It is important.
Well, it's important. It's important for the irrigation industry to be partnering with the other national associations as well as the state associations and to have that continued dialogue. I know our membership appreciates being part of that. I'm sure as does all of the state and other national associations memberships being part of it.
So as this thing was emerging, it became increasingly clear that states were going to set their own rules of engagement about what is essential, what is not, kind of what the rules of engagement and kind of how operations will function. Some are better than others. The state of Michigan basically just shut down.
Yeah.
That's not good, right? So all those customers that all those folks were going to send trucks to, that's up in the open. That's open right now.
Yeah.
So knowing that and having a lot of expertise at the national level, so we compiled Irrigation Association, the National Association of Landscape Professionals, American Hort. We also have the Garden Center group, which ostensibly has really good connections into the garden center community. And then our Canadian friends, the Canadian Nursery and Landscape Association, because provinces and states are just connected.
Oh, the stories out of Ontario are amazing to me. What's going on, the confusion in Ontario and the role that association, Landscape Ontario, is uniquely playing in that debate and managing their relationship with the provincial government as well as their membership. We can write stories about this.
Oh yeah.
Right?
Oh, believe me, I know.
It's like writing stories, Kyle. I mean, you're seeing all this play out at the and you. Sorry, Jeff, I don't interrupt you, but yeah, I mean that's a great example.
Well, and then so how do you have a triage group because by talking about the examples that were happening in provinces and states and perceptions of the National Association, what we found is that national associations are very good in their wheelhouse. So how do we manifest greater communication between the national associations and the states? As John pointed out, the states really are the ones where the action is going to be. So Cassie Larson, the exec at the Minnesota Nursery and Landscape Association, and I said, well, instead of let's, hoping it happens, let's just make it happen.
Do it. Yeah.
And so we really looked at a diverse, geographically diverse set of folks. But you also don't want it to be so large that it really loses its effectiveness. And we're still reporting out things to our national listservs and all that to try to make, because this is no time to hoard information.
No, that's absolutely
but
right.
you got to have a group that is independently minded and thinkers, people that you want in your foxhole, so to speak, to work together. And we just concluded our fourth meeting this just an hour ago plus, and it's a really good exchange of ideas. One of the benefits was talking about the market side, right? So we've created Plant Something that was a really good program about retailer. We converted their map to have where you can put your cursor over any of the states or provinces and see what's open, what the rules are, if there's a resource page for that particular association. So it's a one-stop resource. And I can tell you that my members believe the creation of that alone, along with there's information from the national associations, so you can instantly link to them, is a game changer.
Yeah. And
we didn't wait for the paint to dry on that thing. But I'll say that it was harder than you think to try to accumulate that, have a common denominator, because construction is how Washington thinks about the supply chain side. And Washington's governor just went thermonuke on construction, so to speak. And I think they think hammers and nails, but that's not how it gets applied. Mm-hmm. So the cool news is that out of this, we're learning that it's not about messaging, it's about leadership. And everybody who is participating in this effort has an equal voice. Because I can tell you what's happening in Alabama may happen in Texas or in Washington. And so it's a really good sonar array about what threats and challenges are out there, how quickly things have changed. Like Minnesota went from very bad to very good. Michigan went from bad to opaquely bad.
To nuclear bad. That's exactly
right.
Yeah.
So I'll stop there.
Well, no, in Michigan, to the point of the governor using landscapers as an example of don't do this.
You're not going to get on Biden's ticket by crapping on businesses.
I was going to ask you about that during our meeting, and I didn't. But she, Whitmer, has been one of the top 3 people that I've heard as being Biden's number 2. And I know that you mentioned during the call, Jeff, that you're not going to get on the ticket acting like this. But I'm curious if she's posturing, and this is part of her play.
Well, yeah, if you're looking, if it's going to be you or Harris out of California,
right?
What differentiates yourself? And how can you show that you were a serious player,
right?
And really be the anti-administration approach?
And right now, you look at the national leaders of dialogue when it comes to COVID-19. You have Cuomo out of New York. You have Hogan out of Maryland. My home state.
Fauci. Is that Fauci?
Fauci out of the CDC. Those are the ones driving the discussion, and DeWine to an extent in Ohio. But
I was going to say, don't forget us.
DeWine to an extent. But that's who we have out there being the most vocal. and then, you know, she's making a play. She's elevating herself. Where the point where we're talking about it, you know, not for good reasons, but we're talking about her. She's getting out there into the public ether.
Can I tag on to that,
Yeah,
actually?
yeah.
Your mention of specifically Michigan. And again, specifically calling out landscapers to say, hey, don't do this. It's interesting that's been kind of a touchstone for a lot of people, saying like, oh yeah, it's that was a rough call to specifically say to like none of this. But I've actually heard from some landscapers out in the field saying, thank you for just saying directly that we're not a part of it. Like that kind of clarity is actually a little bit helpful in some cases.
And I go back to Landscape Ontario, Jeff, and what we've heard out of the provincial territory of Ontario, and there's just no clarity. It's clear as mud what can stay open, what can't stay open, and that's the frustrating part. Whether you can be open, not be open, make a choice to be open, not be open. You know, I get it. But you want clarity, and you just want to know if you can I do business or can I not do business. You know, make a decision, be clear about it.
Well, absolutely, and really, it's also about enforcement, right? So if you don't have clear rules, then especially for an industry that may struggle in independent verification of its employees' status.
Mm-hmm.
Is that a careful way of putting that?
Yeah.
Well said, yes.
But I think John brings up a really valid point, and because on these calls we say, okay, grower, open, close, restricted. Same for greenhouse, retail, and then supply chains, right? Irrigation and landscape. And to some degree, I mean, if it's restricted, you know, whatever that means, but we want to make sure that people say it's not the green light to go past go and collect your $200.
Right.
So, I mean, there's a little bit of caution there, but Tony over at Ontario is in an impossible position.
Right.
And he has to not only manage his folks who are calling and say, fix this, fix this, fix this. And then conversely, they're saying, we should just shut down.
Yeah.
I mean,
with this ambiguity, you just don't know. You can't give any advice.
No, and ambiguity is the root of bad decisions.
That's absolutely right.
That's very true.
That's absolutely right. And I get it. It's very difficult to name each trade and say yes, no, yes, no. I think Pennsylvania did it very early on, Jeff. You saw that spreadsheet in Pennsylvania. It may have been a Google Doc for all I know, or some, Excel spreadsheet where they had individual trades, what can stay open, what can't stay open. But even that, I'm sure they missed some. You can't get to every single trade that's out there. And, from the irrigation perspective, I mentioned this before we started recording, but we can fall under landscaping and landscapers. We could fall under plumbing if you're working on a backflow prevention device. And this is on the landscape side. We could fall under construction when you're commercial or residential construction where you're installing an irrigation system. So it just really depends on what the function is. Are you servicing an essential business? Are you servicing a hospital, a bank, a grocery store? Because if that's the case, you're going to want to get some maintenance out there and do the work.
Definitions are really important. I mean, Oregon, I derided our governor initially on how she approached this. Because she said what was closed. And omission is permission.
That's absolutely right. That's right.
So I thought that was a little squishy. But seeing how many changes are occurring in other states, let's give Governor Brown a pass on that one, because honestly, I didn't think it would work, but it's provided. We don't worry about shifting definitions at this point. We just worry about keeping us off the prohibited list, which is a lot easier thing to do.
And now you have this national guidance from the Department of Homeland Security, from this obscure agency no one has ever heard of until 3 weeks ago, with the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Administration, right? And they had one document that was early March, and then another document that was released later on in March, and the later on document called out landscapers as being part of essential business and critical infrastructure. But then in states like Michigan say, you know what, we're going to only reference the early document, and anything subsequent, no, this document is what we're recognizing, and
John, your long experience on Capitol Hill would render, I think, a similar conclusion that I do have on this is that when they first put this out, they said this is advisory only.
Yes.
I mean, really, they were very careful that this was
That's right.
not a
Guidance.
stone tablet coming down with Moses.
Yeah.
So, but the fact is that you have some states who took it now as gospel.
That's it. Well, if you notice in that document, and we're kind of going all over the place, all the map in this conversation here.
Well,
Jeff's and my conversations have gone much worse than this. So
okay. Yeah. I'm getting that read. I'll just let you know.
Should. Yeah, exactly. That document, if you read into it, it talks about, like sports facilities being part of critical infrastructure. And of course, those are not open right now. They're being used for hospitals. I mean, in triage centers.
Well, and in Canada, they ghoulishly they're using the hockey arenas as a morgue.
Oh. Hey, wait a
and
minute.
that's
down, man. That's
reality. Yeah, thanks a lot. All right, bummer out of 64th bunker in Oregon.
But it's a very grim comment, but it's the truth. It's what we're dealing with here. And I know, Kyle, you and I have talked about this as well, and we're getting different feedback on different segments of both your readership and the Irrigation Association's members on their opinions on whether irrigation companies should be open at this time.
I think the difference here, I mean, John, you know this, that my mother was part of medical relief teams all over the globe for a number of years. And the difference between this and SARS, for example, I mean, she was still alive, she would say this now, that SARS, you were symptomatic. So you knew that you felt bad. The difference here, and the reason that this is applicable to the comment on landscapers, anybody who goes out to homes, is that you can be a carrier and not be symptomatic. That's the difference, and so that's why it lends itself to all these different wild different approaches about how states are dealing with it.
Yeah. Kyle, I'll shut up for a second. If anything you want to add?
I do want to ask, I want to kind of flip the question on its head a little bit to say, we've been talking a little bit about the national level and kind of coming down to the state level, so to speak. What's something, looking at things from a state association perspective, what are the things that we should be looking to the state associations for, as far as leadership goes? What are the things that you can do better that no one else can?
Thank you for that question. I think membership, especially in times of disarray and crisis, look for a steady hand for what are we okay? What do I need to know and learn, and how do I protect my employees? On all those things, I think there's a variety of things you can do. First of all, active communication. I think my board has received more emails from me than they ever have. I have daily briefings. I have daily briefings that kind of accumulate a whole bunch of the things that are happening on a multiple levels. Our resource page is one that I encourage folks to go to on the www.oan.org. It's right up there, right? It's right there. We have opened that up so anybody, doesn't matter if you're a nursery operation or a cattle operation. If there's anything you want there, take it. It's no time to hoard information. And I think that providing those type of resources and knowing that who has your back, right? The association is the one who has your back. There's no greater champion for irrigation than John Farner. No, and I mean it. He will lay it all out there in order to protect the industry. And that's where the state associations, in concert with the national ones, think about it being a gigantic dinner table, right? Everybody has a chair. And
there's room for everyone at the table. Let me be very clear about this.
Absolutely. And so it's a bunch of little things, like Andrew Bray, who's doing a great job over at Now. He doesn't wait for me to go search his website for a letter that they submitted. No, I mean, who has time for that?
Right.
And I'll tell you, growers don't. No, growers get mad. They still yell at their mouse. So do I.
Mouse or real mouse? Okay. All right. Okay.
Well, whatever. But my point is that don't make it hard for people to get the information. That's the point I really wanted to make. And state associations can be a great conduit and also lean on each other.
Yeah.
So I mean, let me give you an example. So we did a whole letter to our coronavirus special committee.
Okay.
Talked about the value of, was early on, value of nursery and greenhouse industry, especially retail, right? So we did this whole thing, and Bailey's Nursery in Minnesota said, we saw this. Can I take this to my governor?
Great.
Wow.
And I went, yeah. I mean, he goes, I don't have time to change it. I'm just going to hand it to them. And apparently, because it was Bailey, because they're an influential business, it made a difference. And that's just the kind of thing that it's no skin off my nose. We're not to use it.
It helps the whole industry. Everything we're doing helps the whole green industry. The one big green industry umbrella, nursery, whatever it is. It helps everybody.
And here's the good news, and I want to hear more from you, Kyle, that this is not unusual, this type of collaboration.
Yeah.
It's just a matter of this situation just called for someone to be a convener. And I think I felt that was the role that I was called to do. Oregon's big, right? And my association is probably the biggest in terms of size than anybody else in the country. So I have the benefit of 9 professional staff.
Yeah.
And so early on when we were building this thing, my communication staff worked, just talk about being Scotty of the USS Enterprise.
Yeah.
They were terrific. And so, I take our responsibility, one that is more of service than an ego-driven, look at me printing like a peacock because we're great. No, if it didn't work, we would move on.
Yeah.
So I'll stop there.
No problem. As our professionals are out there, regardless of where they are in the industry, whatever bucket they're in, so to speak, or whatever segment they're in, so to speak, what are the things that should be top of their list in terms of what am I thinking about? What am I putting my energy toward right now?
In terms of individual business?
Yeah.
How would you? I mean, I want to make sure I answer your question.
Yeah, I think in terms of the individual businesses, should they be looking at like their own smaller communities? Should they be looking at their market in general? What are you thinking?
Well, a couple different things occur to me. I mean, first of all, you need to build your budget around this crisis. So what's your cash flow look like? And, how does the short, medium, and long term, maybe at least short, medium term about your customers, are they going to still be available to receive product if you put it on a truck? I think that's first and foremost. Second, how do you then have a healthy workforce? And so taking care of them, because remember, the thing that's insidious about this is that I could be a carrier, and that might result in my father's demise if someone comes in and someone else is a carrier, right? So that has a very real part. And so keep protecting the workforce and communicate. I think it was a poll that I saw that 89% of employees think that their employers are doing the right thing.
Yes.
And so let's not lose sight of catching things that we're doing right. And this is a boat that we're all in. And this is one of the times that it's not political, because no one's shooting holes in the bottom of the boat.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah.
How's that for a creative metaphor?
Well, actually, you lead into the next thing I wanted to ask about, though, because I want to know, we're all kind of trying to lift that weight together, so to speak. Like everyone's out there trying to do what they can. What are some of the good things you're hearing in the industry? Where are some of the people that are making a difference? Where are the people actually doing the work? Well,
I think there's nothing like a calamity to breed innovation and different ways of looking at things. I'll point out one example, and I'm happy to choose other ones if you think it's helpful. But on the retail side, right? Public facing, fear-based, if I go to the garden center, am I going to get sick?
Right.
Or, will I bring sickness to the garden center? So a lot of them, I mean, Al's Garden and Home, who Mark Biggie is a past president of ours, right? They were first in to say, okay, how do we change the terms of how we interact with the public? So for those who have like outdoor parts of their operation, no more inside stuff, only outside, limit, do the social distancing thing.
Right.
But also they've really had to push towards more online ordering and kind of drive-by pickup.
Okay.
In order to try to reduce fear, enhance sales, but also protect the customer base and the employees. So, I mean, that's one about like innovation they've had to do. And keep in mind, this is all in the midst of them looking down a barrel of economic calamity.
Right.
So, I mean, that's one example.
Our nursery and garden center that we use personally here in Maryland, their online presence has skyrocketed tremendously, where you can look at their plant selection online and order it along with mulch or whatever else you want to order that from a general garden center store and have it delivered to your house now, whereas you couldn't really do that before.
It's really interesting to me how quickly this happened too. I mean, our industry in general, regardless of what segment you're in, usually at least comes off as a very one-on-one interpersonal discussion. You're talking to your clients, you're going out to the garden center, you're making connections with those other companies. It's really amazing to me how quickly we've shifted in a lot of our situations to a more online presence. And I think it speaks to how efficient or how innovative might be the word actually. People in our industry can be, I think.
I also think that it's going to be an expectation now going forward. So you'll still have the interpersonal part, which is the nicest part. The interpersonal interactions. But I think that this will be part of the business model, regardless of what health crisis recedes.
Yeah.
So the Jeff, the map that's going to be on the Nursery and Landscape Association Executive's website, so nlae.org, and we confirmed today it's not going to be password protected. So I know the Irrigation Association is going to promote that. I believe Kyle, Irrigation Green Industry is going to put that and possibly in your blog coming up.
Absolutely.
As well.
Yeah, it's it looks like a great resource.
Yeah, absolutely. So we're going to have that up. Your website is oan.org, correct?
Yes, correct.
Okay. And you have a full COVID-19 resource page.
Absolutely.
Yours is very well done. I will say that.
Well, and I think in my emails, you'll see a little box that has a direct link to it.
Yes.
So
okay, great.
We can put that in.
We can add that. Yeah. So, well, Jeff, we appreciate it, man.
Absolutely.
Of course.
It's always a pleasure talking to you.
Likewise.
I know that, Kyle, you don't know this, but Jeff is our resident movie connoisseur.
Oh.
And he actually put together when they canceled March Madness.
Yes,
it was a sad day in the Stone household.
Yeah.
They're religious holidays for me.
Yeah, clearly.
You took off work. You take off
Yeah,
work.
I do. The first 2 days.
That's right. That's right. So we're part of this little Facebook group of movies and talk about different things. And so when March Madness was canceled, Jeff, being the leader among equals that he is, took it upon himself to develop a 64-team movie bracket. Right?
Incredible.
Yep. The Tarantino region, the Scorsese region, the Spielberg region, and the Hitchcock region.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it was very well done. And it was quite impressive. Empire Strikes Back won.
Over Godfather.
Over Godfather.
That is a tough matchup.
It was a popular vote deal. And there was a lot of side chatter.
There was a lot of complaining over Jeff's selections, which he had the response of, do your own. This is what you get.
Hey, I mean, now that I know this, I have to ask, I'm going to put you on the spot. As we're all dealing with, being locked in, what top 3 movies that people should be looking at?
Oh boy, here we go.
Look up. Hey, I'm just quick hit. What are the top 3 movies people should be watching right now?
How about this? I'll give you what my personal final 4 were.
Yes, got it. Do it.
Raiders of the Lost Ark.
Okay.
Phenomenal. Still holds up. I watched it yesterday. so many.
You do realize, this is taken from the Big Bang Theory, but if you take Indiana Jones out of that movie, the result is still the same. Just saying.
Okay.
Nazis still get the Ark. They still open it up. They'd all die. It's all the same.
Yeah.
Okay. That's very hurtful.
Just let him be, John.
I'm sorry. Go ahead. I'm going to tear up all every four. Okay, go ahead.
So Raiders of the Lost Ark was coming out of the Spielberg region.
Absolutely.
And they're not linked in terms of, direct. It's just how I worked it up. The Hitchcock region had Raiders was a number 3 seed.
Okay.
Number 1 seed out the Hitchcock region was Empire Strikes Back.
It's such a good movie.
The Tarantino region had 4 seed Aliens.
Oof. Oh yeah, yeah. A sleeper on that too. Like that's one that
And then in the Scorsese region, Godfather 2 made it through. They were a 3 seed.
Yeah.
Because if you get put in a boat and you shoot your brother, you get to be in the Final 4.
It seems right to me. I don't see a problem with that. I think any of those are great choices. That's an extremely good Final 4.
No,
well, I mean, it's all about personal preference, right?
It is all
of course.
That's absolutely right. That's right.
Yeah, obviously.
No, Jeff did a good job with that. It was very.
I'll send you the completed bracket.
Yes. Please do. I would like to see this.
I should, we're still recording, by the way, but
post this. I don't care.
I'm putting him on the record. Yeah, I'm putting him on the record on this. There's no question.
I showed that bracket to my son, and he was, because my 13-year-old is a huge movie buff. Like he just studies everything movies.
Yeah.
When I told him about this, and so I went through each one, and he was guessing who won based on who the actual results. We had a good time with that. So
very nice.
Well, number 2 seed Jurassic Park got upset by 15 seed One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest.
Oh, yeah, wow.
Yeah. So basically, Jurassic Park is Gonzaga.
I think that's probably the only time you'll ever make that comparison. But yeah.
Well, they're a fraud.
Oh my gosh. Amazing.
All right, Jeff. We'll leave it at that. Thanks, brother. I appreciate it.
Anytime. Really good to talk to you guys.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
And we're back, just me and Kyle. That's a fun conversation. Jeff is like I said, a good friend. He is not one for lack of words.
No, yeah.
And he provides some good information in an entertaining way as well, like I said before, Kyle.
Yeah, I was really impressed with a lot of his insights. I thought that really honestly, the thing that kept coming back to me in terms of how he was describing how this is really not a time to hoard information. Like this is the time that we need to be sharing this kind of information. I think it's a great touchstone for us in general.
That's absolutely right. And when you brought up the relationship between the state associations and the national associations, that's a very good point. And that in crisis communications and crisis efforts, you can control what you can control, and everything else, you need to focus on what you can control, and the flow of information and communication is key. And you need to look at the audiences and you're looking at from, IGIN, you're doing your best to convey stories and information out to your viewership, your viewers, your readers, right? Your readers. And then you have the Irrigation Association side. We're doing our best to convey as much of the pertinent information as possible out there to our members. But then you have these ancillary organizations, the folks that rely on irrigation, and that irrigation relies on as well, that symbiotic relationship. And you want to make sure we're partnering with them as well, because in some areas, like Jeff mentioned, things are going really well, very well. And in other areas, they are not. And the industry is taking a big hit in those areas. But the good news that comes out of all of this is that this industry is resilient. And I truly believe that the associations are doing their best in my conversations with everybody, and we are providing support to everyone, state among state, national to state, state to national, national to national. We are all working together on this. The flow of information is there. We are not competitive. We're not proprietary.
Right.
It is a true partnership here. And I wanted to get that story out first to kind of give that broad perspective from the green industry side. So
it is really great to hear, even as just kind of an establishing thought, to remind everyone that, yeah, even though we are kind of disparate parts of the market, we are kind of pushing through this all together. Like, we're all doing our best in this situation to try to work together and get kind of the best result for everyone. And something that associations that are perfectly situated to do, that we're doing our best to make sure that everyone gets the best result we can.
Yeah, and in this is uncharted territory for all of us. All of us.
Yeah.
I mean, we're sitting at our house, at our homes right now. I'm in my office, with some cords back here that
Yeah.
not been cleaned up yet. We just kind of all just picked up our lives and went to certain areas. Some of us are affected more than others, and I have a few friends in the restaurant business, and they are shut down at home right now, and not knowing what's next. And we have members of the Irrigation Association who are not able to work or have chosen to stay home and not work, which is admirable in and of itself, and to slow the curve, so to speak. And we have others who are taking a big financial hit, and others in the ag side that are doing better. So it's, we're all affected differently here, and our job is to just be there for our members and for our readers and everybody else now throughout this public health crisis and beyond, and I'll say it, to help build our industry back up to what it once was, no matter what the economic and public health situation is, 6 months from now.
Yeah.
So that's really the goal of us. And this podcast is a very small part of that. It's a fun way for us to get our message out there. And Kyle, I appreciate you being a part of it.
Thanks for having me.
I think you and I have good conversations, and we keep it fun.
Yeah.
While giving good information out, and I look for this will be a series, so we're going to schedule some more of these, and we'll get some more information out there. I don't know how regular it's going to be, depending on who's available to give us some interviews, but we want to make sure to get stay in touch with our members and our listeners as much as possible here. So
I'm looking forward to connecting again.
Good?
Yeah, thanks.
All right, Kyle, thanks a lot, man.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
All right, we have another meeting in like 5 minutes, so we got to get
to
that
yeah.
meeting. I know.
I guess I'll have to get some water here.
It's another Zoom meeting, so it's we should have bought stock in Zoom.
Honestly, I don't know how I missed that. Or honestly, graphics editor or something to put up some cool Zoom backgrounds.
That'll be the next thing. Who has a cool Zoom background?
Ooh,
competition.
There we go.
All right, everybody. This is Bring Water to Life.